Welcome to Quicksand, the most important news in pharma and biotech this week. Patient groups and other non-industry stakeholders can now request meetings with staff from the FDA Center for Drug Evaluation and Research through a new online system. FDA says the new external stakeholder meeting request system will help non-industry groups such as patient advocacy groups and healthcare professionals meet with CDER staff to discuss drug development and safety issues more easily. Meetings with patient advocacy groups, healthcare professionals, and other non-industry stakeholders are invaluable to our work. They provide a mechanism for communicating and sharing ideas with one another to improve efficiency and advance medical product development, FDA writes. To request a meeting, stakeholders must complete an online form on FDA's website and provide their name, the name of their organization, as well as the topic and goal of the meeting being sought. Stakeholders are also asked to provide their affiliation and the affiliation of any other potential attendees, as well as an agenda and questions for the agency. Meeting requests will be reviewed by FDA's professional affairs and stakeholder engagement staff. Those stakeholders interested in meeting with FDA on issues other than drug development or drug safety are encouraged to contact FDA's Office of Health and Constituent Affairs. The FDA unveiled another batch of new and revised product-specific draft guidances on, among other things, the design of bioequivalence studies to support abbreviated new drug applications. The 35 new and 22 revised guidance documents include what FDA said are 19 guidance documents on complex generics and add to the 32 new and 19 revised guidance documents issued in October 2017, as well as the 21 new and 16 revised draft guidances released in May 2017, and dozens of others in 2016, and others dating back to 2012. In deciding which guidance documents to issue, FDA's Office of Generic Drugs said in a report that it considers the complexity of the formulation, ability to accurately measure its bioavailability at the site of action, scientific methods to demonstrate bioequivalence, and previous experience with and knowledge of similar drugs. New drafts issued featured specific guidance for generic developers trying to bring competition to market for, among others, Pfizer's eczema drug Eucrisa, Tesaro's PARP inhibitor Zejula, Clovis's PARP therapy Rubraca, Exelixis's renal cell carcinoma drug Carbomatex, and Takeda's multiple myeloma treatment Ninlaro. Among the revised product-specific drafts is one for oxycodone and one for lansoprazole. The FDA approved generic drugs at record high levels in 2017, though a new deadline related to elemental impurities has put a dent in that progress, at least preliminarily in January, according to the most recent Generic Drug Activities Report update. In January, FDA says it has approved just 25 abbreviated new drug applications compared to the 80 or so monthly approvals from the previous 3 months. Questions were raised on this expected decline in ANDA approvals in January and the effect of a January 1st, 2018 USP deadline on controlling elemental impurities in drug products, though drug makers had known about that deadline for years. The updated figures come as FDA released new considerations for applicants deciding when to submit elemental impurity data. In general, FDA recommends that any applicant who has not fully addressed elemental impurities in their applications in the current form submit the information as soon as possible, the agency says. For those with goal dates this month, FDA says if the applicant chooses to not submit information to address the elemental impurity issue today, they would receive a complete response on or before the GDUFA goal date. This CR could potentially only contain this one deficiency. However, if the official goal date is in April or later, FDA says the review of elemental impurity information could be subsumed under the current review clock. GlaxoSmithKline's China bribery imbroglio is a scandal that just won't die. After having paid more than $500 million to lay to rest investigations by Chinese and U.S. authorities, the UK drug maker has now been asked for new info from fraud investigators in its home country. In its fourth quarter 2017 earnings report, GSK said that it had been asked to provide information about third-party advisors engaged by the company in the course of the China investigations. The request came from the UK's Serious Fraud Office, which initiated an investigation in 2014, the year after the bribery case exploded in China, set off by a clandestine sex tape involving former GSK China head Mark Riley, which executives received alongside a whistleblower's corruption allegations. Bound by an agreement with the SEC, GSK also informed the DOJ and is responding to the requests for additional information. The company was known to have hired a husband and wife private investigation team who ultimately spent time in prison for their efforts. The couple, Peter Humphrey of the UK and Yu Xinzhen, sued GSK unsuccessfully in the US in 2016, alleging GSK hired them to gather information on Vivian Shi, then the drug maker's government relations head in China. GSK believed she was the source of the bribery allegations that the company had paid off doctors to get sales in the country. But the pair of sleuths also said they were hired with the understanding that the bribery allegations were false. Instead, they claimed they wound up with an assignment to pinpoint the source of the sex tape of Riley and to create a dossier on Shi to frame her as a vindictive former employee. While a number of employees were rounded up by Chinese authorities, Riley left the country without being arrested. Ultimately, the pair was arrested in 2013 for illegally obtaining and selling personal information about Chinese citizens. After a not fully public legal process, Humphrey received a 2.5-year prison sentence, and Yu was sentenced to 2 years. After nearly 2 years in prison, they were deported. They brought their lawsuit to collect damages for the lost business and physical and emotional stress, but a U.S. federal judge tossed their case, saying they didn't have standing in the U.S. The European Medicines Agency has offered advice on when drug developers should assess the effect of obesity on pharmacokinetics and pharmacodynamics. In a draft reflection paper, EMA recommends sponsors test drugs in clinical trial cohorts representative of broader disease populations throughout development to ensure they understand the effect of obesity on PK/PD. Following that recommendation should ensure that drugs destined to be used in patient populations in which obesity is prevalent come to market backed by PK/PD data relevant to these obese people. Another section of the draft details the effects obesity can have on absorption, distribution, elimination, and other aspects of a drug's performance. EMA concludes evidence of the effect of obesity on PK/PD is limited, but enough data has emerged to justify asking sponsors to factor it into their development plans. The agency also discusses how sponsors can investigate the effect of obesity on PK. In some cases, the population PK analyses typically used to support marketing authorizations will be sufficient, provided the sponsor has enough data on patients who fall into all categories of obesity. EMA points to non-compartmental analysis as a possible alternative to population PK, and suggests that physiologically based pharmacokinetic modeling could become useful in the future. Thank you for listening to Quicksand, episode 17, February 12th, 2018.